So let me introduce my panel just before we set the context of the conversation today. And I want to start with my immediate left here, Mwaniki Mageria. He is the Secretary General of the Riverwood Ensemble Filmmakers Association, a big title there, just call him the Sec-Gen of Riverwood. And next to him, we have Ezekiel Muta, the CEO of KFCB. He's not been a stranger on the screens, not this past week, and he's still on. He's actually mastered the art of getting the attention of the media on crucial matters. He'll tell us a bit more about where this conversation and narrative is moving forward from last week's meeting. And next to him is someone I'm told was his lecturer, Professor Kimani Jogu. Thank you for joining us. He is the chairman of the Creative Economy Working Group here in Kenya. And of course, as the name suggests, he heads a group of people who are in the creative industry. And not too far from that, although she is also from a different discipline, Dr. Njoki Ngumi. She is a medical doctor, but an award-winning filmmaker and as well a writer, but is working at the moment at Hiva Fund, which is a group, or rather an organization that helps build the potential of the East African market, and that is the economy, the creative economy, that is. So they're very close with Professor in terms of their agenda. And not last, and he actually just gave me his card just in case I got his name wrong, that is Jim Shamoun. He is the MD of Blue Sky Films. So I'll set the context in a bit. You know what's been going on since Tuesday last week at that stakeholders meeting at the Louis Leakey Forum earlier in the week. That is Tuesday. But first, I need to actually acknowledge the victory of some of our colleagues. And we would like to acknowledge KTN's Asha Mwilu and Rashid Idi, who jointly won the CNN African Journalist of the Year award this past weekend. Asha Mwilu, the features and documentaries editor at KTN, and senior cameraman Rashid Idi won the much coveted CNN Multi-Choice Journalist of the Year award for their special assignment report, Terror Crossing, on terrorism at the Kenya-Somalia border in Mandera County. They emerge atop a list of respected journalists on the continent, beating 37 other finalists out of 1,637 entries. Well, all the best to them, and congratulations to the entire team at KTN and the Standard Group. Right, on Tuesday, the 11th of October, practitioners in the film and entertainment industry in Kenya had rejected a proposed bill, draft, to regulate the industry. The Kenya Film Classification Bill 2016 had raised issues that players in the industry claimed were draconian and would kill their craft. KFCB CEO Ezekiel Muta came under fire from key players in the industry who now question the scope of his mandate. This is a report as was filed by Leila Mohammed.
The stage was set this morning at the Louis Leakey Auditorium, and all that remained was for someone to call out lights, camera, and action.
You cannot come with a bill that intends to be a law that will regulate what we are doing online, and you do not talk to us.
The scene, though noisy, would be the perfect set to role-play their grievances in a plot of an entangled web.
But look, these are just proposals.
The theme of this day's drama would be film and entertainment industry versus Ezekiel Muta. The main bone of contention would be the proposed Films, Stage Plays and Publications Act 2016.
We take this document to the shredder and in good faith start to engage afresh.
And with that, the Gashara Declaration got a standing ovation, with all the stakeholders here supporting the proposal to trash the bill in totality. But then again, were all the stakeholders engaged?
We are legitimate stakeholders, but there are also other people who are stakeholders. No.
And we shall only talk to the people who have appointed you, because those can lead this process if you cannot responsibly lead this process. We still respect you, but you have to respect us back and know that whatever you want to regulate is what we create.
I can tell you that we agree. So if that is a resolution, you want us to write it down?
But even as the entertainers throw out the proposed KFC Bill 2016, Ezekiel Muta insists that his core mandate is to protect the rights of every Kenyan, As the entertainers insist, it is also their right for freedom of expression.
I think we'll be lying to ourselves if you say there's no bad content in the media, that children are okay.
We are asking, what is the crime of creation of content, unless you want people to stop creating content?
Until all stakeholders sit and churn a way forward, it's a wrap until the next productions begin.
I'm not madam. My name is Georgie Barrow.
Lila Mohammed, NTV.
Well, yesterday, the KFCB gave a statement, and just to clarify some issues, and this is the first para of this, and I'd just like to start with this side or perspective, rather. Over the past few days, the statement says there have been misleading reports, and this is what I have here on screen, in sections of the local media suggesting that the Kenya Film Classification Board intends to introduce a new regulatory law to replace the Films and Stage Plays Act Cap 222 of the law of Kenya, the legislation upon which the board's establishment is based. And also, just to put it on record here, we're not bringing Bwana Ezekiel under fire. He hasn't paid me to say this. This is a conversation to really bring the ideas at the center, at the core, and really discuss it in terms of what the facts are. And I'm sure the panelists are here for that. No one is here to waste time and throwing anything. Please don't throw the cups, I only have those. And there's something that also came up. I want us to react, first of all, to this. Bwana Ezekiel, there's been this feeling in what you've said in your statement that there's a misrepresentation or misleading reports. What do you mean by this? Even to date?
Yeah, I mean, when you keep showing what you have just shown,
yes.
First of all, that is very skewed reporting,
right.
Misinformation, misrepresentation of facts, and the very culture of the media to thrive on side shows that add no value. So for you to pick bloggers and intoxicated fellows, and you can see, and make them the basis of a conversation so serious as this, with these dignified people, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And this is the bane of our media in Kenya today,
right.
That we don't go for issues, we thrive on side shows, non-issues, at the expense of the real issues to divert attention. And I tend to think you're doing it deliberately,
yes.
Because you don't want regulation. The media has been fighting the programming code since it was published by CA, and the Kenya Film Classification Board was put under Section 3 as the enforcing authority.
Right.
And the agenda is obvious. I've been drawn cartoon. I saw one yesterday where I was naked. I am very unfortunate,
yes.
by a man of the caliber of Gando to
yes.
do that kind of thing. One, it's unfair, it's unprofessional, and it's not even the right thing to do.
Right. So it's been a lot of attacking the person.
And it's deliberate by the media to divert attention from the real issues. These are the real issues. That the media in Kenya today is not playing their role professionally to set the agenda for development and guide the country on the path of development. Number two, the media in Kenya today is not upholding the programming code to promote the local artists by playing 40 to 6% local content. They are playing Niger movies from morning to evening, soap operas from, Mexican soap operas, right. And Spanish soap operas, and they are not obeying the law as it is today. The media today is not respecting the professional code of ethics in terms of protecting children from harmful exposure. And that we are playing pornography and adult content from morning to evening, despite the fact that there is a principle called the Watershed Period Program. Right. So I came in a year ago and called the bluff of the media, called it for what it is, that we are not being professional. I'm a media professional myself. I've invested in this industry up to PhD level. I've done my first, he taught me, this is my professor, by the way, one of the most distinguished in the region. And he was my teacher. I did not school outside so that somebody can say you don't know which university I went to. My first degree in Kenyatta University. I did my master's in Nairobi University. I've been the Secretary General of KFCB. I worked in this media house for 9 years. I've been the Information Secretary, Director of Information. Seriously, if you really wanted a CEO that can engage, understand the industry, and has substance to give, you're not getting anybody around better than Ezekiel Mutua. But what are you showing? Drawing cartoons of me naked and looking brainless, and you think that's professional? I believe the agenda is obvious, but let's get to the issues of the day.
Okay. You've pitched quite well in terms of who's qualified for this particular job, and you've stated your claim. I've given you a right of reply. I'll start with Bwana Jim, because I believe you were there, and also Prof was there, if I'm not wrong, and Dr. Njoki. I mean, were these sideshows, or where the smoke, there's fire? I mean, it was good for TV, I have to admit. It was really good for TV, the reaction shots, I won't lie. But was it really a sideshow?
No, I don't think it was a sideshow. I think that because the draft had been circulated a few days prior to this,
yes,
it basically got the whole industry and affiliated industries very upset, because the rules in there, some of the rules, obviously, as Mr. Muta says, have been there from 40 years ago.
Yeah, 60s, yes.
But other rules that were coming in, upset many people, and some of the stakeholders who had not been invited, the publishers, the theater people and such like, felt that they were being deliberately sidelined so that the act would pass without their involvement in it, because only film people had been invited. And then, later on they'd be told, but it was a stakeholders meeting, why weren't you there? So
Okay.
this basically got the whole industry to get together, the creative industry,
Yes.
and decide that, what we really want to do is we want to be involved from day one, from the beginning of this. We don't want to start looking at a finished document and then start modifying it line by line, and then again, what is presented to the ministry afterwards
Yes.
may not reflect what our inputs are. We want a series of meetings where minutes are taken, modifications are entered in, and we know that our interests are being safeguarded. And of course, despite what Mr. Muta says, there are whole sections in this which were not there before.
Okay. And I'd want you to point out, as we get into that, just initial responses right now, based on what we've just played and what has played out during the week from Tuesday. Dr. Njoki, I'd throw this one to you. I saw you jotting down when Ezekiel said that there were jokers there and detractors. You were there.
I was there.
Yes.
I was. In fact, it's so interesting for me that when Mr. Muta, Dr. Muta or Mr. Muta, what do you prefer? I'll call you doctor. When Dr. Muta said that there were inebriated fellows versus dignified fellows, I was the one myself, my full name as Dr. Saranjoki Wadhingira-Ngomi, who stood up and asked him to confirm that he was going to trash the bill as he had promised. I wanted to hear it from his mouth, so that when he was quoted later, he couldn't go back on his word. But he has, and we can move on from that.
As he had promised where?
As he had promised at that meeting.
Okay.
He was asked, can you say that you're going to trash the bill? He could have refused. He's a free Kenyan, like all of us.
Right.
He could have said no. We would have gone from the meeting knowing that it was not in his best interest to trash the bill at that point in time, and we would have been able to trust in his honesty.
Right.
At this point in time, we are not even sure what to trust when it comes out of his mouth, and I'm sorry to say that, sir.
Okay.
The second thing was that you were calling us intoxicated. I was there, my colleagues were there. Many people have worked in this industry for many, many years were also there. None of us was intoxicated. You cannot say that in public, and you cannot say that in a quotable way when we are here to refute the fact that we were not drunk. Okay. None of us was drunk. You don't like being drawn naked. I don't like being called drunk when I'm at a meeting talking about things that affect what puts bread and butter on my table. So maybe what we can do is to put aside the side shows, and these are side shows of name calling, because none of us has called him names. If he has an issue with Gado, he can take it up with him, but none of us has called him names. We're just here to review CAP 222, which is part of his mandate,
yes,
which is what makes us able to work, able to push the creative economy and in particular film ahead. The other people who were quote unquote not invited to this forum are people who would have been affected by the input into this draft.
Yes.
And that's people like even visual arts, because there are places in the bill that talk about objectionable content almost being anything that is not covered by this bill.
Okay.
And so before I'm told that I haven't done my reading, that is a fact. That section of the bill can be pulled up and read here for people to hear. But I'm interested in being able to move past the side shows of name calling, the side shows of saying that an entire swath of the industry in this city attended a meeting drunk and uninvited. That's not how we operate. We have work. We could have been doing our work the whole day, and instead we spent 2.5 hours there trying to reach consensus, which we thought we had.
Okay.
So let's move forward now.
All right, but Prof, given benefit of the doubt, your student at one point, and as he says, he actually invited stakeholders. Well, some feel they weren't invited, but he actually did invite people to come to the table and discuss this particular issue. So benefit of the doubt that.
Well, it's true that he did invite some people.
Okay.
I was aware of the meeting before the meeting took place.
Yes.
Because there was conversation online, because we are stakeholders, and we learned that there's going to be such a meeting. Personally, I didn't attend, but I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends who attended the meeting.
Yes.
And I followed the meeting very, very closely. I followed it on Twitter, and I continued following it, and I followed it.
And also actually engaged with him.
And also engaged him directly,
right.
you know, really over the last couple of days, very, very directly with him. I think the fundamental problem is that when you present a document as proposals, you actually assume that these proposals are well thought out, because you cannot present proposals that have not been processed. Because they are proposals. Right. You are proposing to a sector that this is the direction we would like to move. Do you agree or don't you agree? And what sections of these proposals don't you agree with? You cannot present proposals that are too raw. So in my understanding, and actually because I pulled the document on the KFCB website,
yes,
and read it very, very closely, it was quite clear to me that the proposals were so unpalatable that you couldn't actually start with them. Okay. You couldn't just start with them. And therefore, you need to go back the drawing board and say, can we start having a conversation and actually come up with alternative proposals,
right,
you know, which are acceptable to the sector. So to the extent that these were proposals, the sector assumed that the board had processed this, and this was actually what they were presenting as possible direction for the sector. Yeah.
Okay. All right. He'll clarify on that. Bwana Magere, just before we take a first break, because we're just getting initial reactions as to how this has been received generally. We made an acrimonious environment out of it just for the heck of ratings.
Well, what you see, the thing is, us in Riverwood, we're very busy. We make films. That's what we do. That's our work. So when we had we had a new CEO at KFCB, we went and presented ourselves and said, we are the guys who make films, and can we do something together? Can you help us do something together? So some of the things that we talked about were some of the laws that are in place are outdated. Yes, they're outdated. Can we start doing something about that? Now, we tried to follow up the issue of the film policy, but film policy was not, I believe, not in the docket or something that he could not work on. So he decided, let's work on CAP 222. So we did have some deliberations. We gave some recommendations, but we did not, what can I say, we did not author what was the proposed bill, but we did engage from very early on. And I think we found out that when you engage government and talk with them, they respond. They do respond to you, and we're an association that is registered.
Yes.
And we have a big, in fact, when I was getting figures from this, the Ambika.
On the profit.
Yes, on profit. And Riverwood is worth $22.5 million. So I mean, we're big players in this industry. So we felt that we could engage them. Now, when we had this meeting last week, was it?
Tuesday, yes.
It was quite interesting because the issues now started, we felt that we needed to discuss and move forward. This was a draft, let's move forward with this draft. And what do we want, what don't we want on it? But I think the statement, the way it was phrased and the way that people felt that they had not been involved and that kind of thing created such an atmosphere for a confrontation.
Right.
However, I would like to say one thing that I would like to give Ezekiel credit for, is that we have been trying to get the whole industry to come together and speak on one voice and try and come together. Our biggest enemy, by the way, is our disunity in the film industry. So this, I think, has brought all of us together, let us not squander this opportunity. Let us take this thing forward. As Njokia said, let's move forward together and make this best for our children, our children's children, for posterity.
Yes.
I think we will go down in history as the ones who made a difference for the creative sector, for the film industry.
Talking about being together and speaking in one voice, in fact, this was alluded to in the statement that was given out by KFCB. And the third point, I guess, the clamor for the review of the Films and Stage Plays Act was initiated by stakeholders in the film and broadcast industry. And in fact, when Ezekiel will talk about it in a letter on the 23rd of August, they wrote to the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Arts Cabinet Secretary. So it actually didn't start on Tuesday, as they say. The issues have been in discussion over time, and even before that particular forum that you witnessed. And most of what you saw was the dramatic shots, which we somewhat like. And perhaps that's maybe our undoing. But now in the next segment, we'll get into the issues, break down the issues that we have concerns with from the industry. Stay with Press Pass. Welcome back to Press Pass, and the issue on focus is the regulations, proposals that are being put forward on the Films and Stage Plays Act Cap 222, and it's caused a lot of conversation around this since Tuesday when there was a stakeholders meeting, and actually on Friday during the panel discussion with the Trend host Larry Mado, KFCB CEO Ezekiel Muta denied that the contentious draft Film, Stage Plays and Publications Bill 2016 was trashed at the Tuesday meeting of stakeholders. And here's an excerpt of that conversation. We'll get clarity on that.
Mr. Mutua, you did commit earlier in the week that this whole thing has been trashed. Is that still the position? We're starting afresh?
Can I tell you the truth? That's not the position. So Lizzie should get it from me. What we did was we invited stakeholders who wrote to the Cabinet Secretary. They chose their members. But the meeting was hijacked by activists who made the meeting ungovernable and unmanageable, and we had to call it off. Those are not the only stakeholders.
You are on record saying the exact opposite of that. We've got video of you committing. We've got video of you committing that this whole draft was trashed and the process would begin afresh. You seem to be changing your story now.
Mr. Mutua,
Larry, can you get the context?
So he asked there, can we get the context? And I'll ask Bon Ezekiel Mutua. I mean, people are talking about this, that now we can't trust you if you said something within the stakeholders meeting that we're trashing this bill, and now you've come back or retracted on that statement and said, no, this is not the position. What was the statement and what was the context of this?
The context is, if I'm carjacked and people who are holding guns over me tell me to say this, you can't take that to be the position that would define my position.
Did you say it?
In a normal meeting. No, look at it this way.
Okay.
You asked me to say the context.
Okay, now did you say it?
The people who took over the meeting were not the people we invited. The people we invited are here.
Okay.
They are in the document that was sent to the CS. They have signed, their signatures are here. We told them to pick members who can come to the meeting.
Representatives.
Yeah, but we had probably 75% of the people are not invited. And it therefore did not turn out to be a meeting. There were no minutes. There were no records of anything. And they actually demanded, you remember when I took over the microphone to close the meeting, I said, can we agree on the way forward? And they told me, no, you've got to say that you have trashed it. Okay? And a meeting that is disrupted under that kind of scenario,
hijacked in a way.
Hijacked by people, and we didn't want to engage because I think they were pushing us probably to lose our cool or call the police. We didn't want to go that way.
Okay.
So I think it's unfortunate that that's the line you want to push, and I want to let you have your day. That's what you want to hear?
Well, it's not.
Yeah?
It's not what I want to hear. So it's what is the truth and clarity. That's what, even in inviting you, because people keep holding
clarity.
You are repeating.
Larry
That's what I'm asking.
sure.
People keep saying that he said it's been trashed, but if it's not the case, and I'm giving you the right of reply.
Yes, the correct position is that was the first meeting ever that we held over Cap 222.
Right.
There are various stakeholders, including consumers of content, including legislators,
even religious groups,
parents,
the youth,
youth, and people who represent children.
That you've been engaging.
We have not gone to them. No, this was the first meeting.
Okay.
Remember, this became urgent for us to address because we have this letter that was written to the CS.
Yes.
And the CS, in writing, tells me you need to meet with these crucial stakeholders and iron out these outstanding issues. And I wrote to him and told him, sir, we have organized a meeting.
And
that
you started
was the
meeting with the heads.
But unfortunately, I think 75% of the people there, we could not account for who was there because we had invited different groups.
Right.
And I can say Jim was not one of them, neither was Dr. Ngumi.
So it wasn't necessarily an open session?
While they were so civil and both of them spoke in the meeting, there were, and they cannot deny this, there was a group of youth, and you can see the photos, who are unmanageable, who are unruly. And I mean, in circumstances like those, the best thing to do was to call off the meeting.
Right.
But the position is that consultations then go on with the other stakeholders. You talk to other people, and you tell them, actually the group at Louis Leakey Auditorium said we trash. What do you say? And probably they will tell you trash as well. So I think we should not say there are no other stakeholders.
Okay.
The one thing that for us who have been engaging with kind of KFCB, we felt that the meeting did not go in a way that showed us in good light in terms of the film industry. We looked like hecklers, like people who cannot discuss something maturely. And you see, the thing, it wasn't the first time that this happened. We had a meeting, I think it was way back in 2010, 2011, when the previous KFC, Kenya Film Commission managing director called a forum just to discuss with people like this. We did it again in 2013. We have people who just want to be a criminal. With this time around, we wanted to have a nice, orderly meeting, people talking properly, you stand, state your claim, and so on and so forth. But the way it was, it turned out, it looked like we're not serious people. All we do is shout and do not let the other person give his part of the argument.
But so it set the agenda in a way. Whether or not it was, yes.
The guy was speaking there, the one was saying we are legitimate stakeholders, but we are not the only stakeholders, is a very senior professor at the School of Law. And a guy stood in that meeting and told him, you quack, get out of that auditorium.
Okay. Dr. Njoki was there. I want to give first.
When I say it was disrupted,
and hijacked.
Please take my word. It was not a meeting.
Right. Yes, and you were there, and you actually said that
I really need to repeat. I really wish people could find the footage because it was me. It was me with my face. It was my body. It was my voice that asked for your words, saying that you. So when you talk about duress, it was me that was putting you under duress. Please don't vilify the rest of the film industry. I am sitting here.
Can we see the footage?
You can ask them to find the footage.
Yeah,
but let me finish, Daktari, let me finish. For me, it's so exciting that so many men are concerned with the quality of emotions that was at that meeting, which for me is the real sideshow. And you know the way emotions are usually feminized in the public space, but I digress. When we want to talk about making revisions to CAP 222, no amount of revision is going to turn a gunia into an evening gown. It's not going to happen. This is exactly what the people at the meeting were saying, that this was not created with our best interests at heart. It paints us in the worst of ways. When Mwaneki makes reference to it, it makes us look like hecklers. It makes us look like people who are not organized. It's because of the things that the draft was proposing about people who create content. And even when we say that it was just about people who make film, and I'm one of the people who make film, there were so many other people in the wait, no sir, I'm not finished. I'm not finished. While we are trying to be rational here. When we talk about other people who are represented in that forum and who are mentioned in that bill not being allowed to have voices, definitely nobody should have called you names, nobody should have said etc, but people should be allowed to feel how they feel about a draft that does not represent their best interests. I work for an organization called HIVA. HIVA has been at the forefront, and together with the Creative Economy Working Group, where we sit with Prof, and we've been talking so hard about how to move the creative economy of this country forward. If that draft goes forward as is, it'll be so dangerous for people and creators of digital media because of the number of new licenses, new compliance things, new everything. With regard to even the 100 shillings per minute, which I know Daktari will bring up, it's really a thing. It's going to make so many problems, and he has said that he's been talking with Treasury about recanting that. But that is one thing. When we go back to the bill, it comes to things like if you write your script in another language, you are the one that has to pay for translation. You have to send it to Nairobi for the CEO to read. I mean, things like that. And those are the things that we want to go over and say, these are not helpful to the creative economy of this country.
Let me start with Jim. You said there's some issues that there you needed to have clarified. I mean, let's move away from the emotions into now to the issues. If you can, just please outline.
Perhaps not clarifying them, but there are certain things that I have issue with. This is the press release that is released the night before the meeting. It says here, during the forum tomorrow, a schedule for meetings with other stakeholders such as parents, media industry practitioners, advertisers, state agencies, learning institutions, religious organizations, members of parliament, county governments will be provided. Our stand on this is that these are not stakeholders.
Okay.
Because if you remove all of these, parents, industry players, religious leaders, what is left? Who are you going to interact with? Who are you going to engage when it's time for the public forums? These are our consumers. You know, I said this on Larry's show. When there is a tea industry problem, when the Kenya Tea Development Authority is there interacting with the unions, interacting with the workers, interacting with the companies that sell tea, I do not turn up there and say, I am a stakeholder because I drink tea. What you need to do is deal with these stakeholders, the people who work in this industry, who produce films, who service the people who produce films. And then once all this is done and they are happy that their industry is on the right track, then you can engage everybody else that you want, and then we will engage them also directly.
All right. Yes, Prof. First.
Yes. I think that there are fundamental problems with what is being proposed. And what is even more disturbing for me is really the process itself. I would like to encourage Kenya Film Classification Board to look at the guidelines provided by the Kenya Law Reform Commission on the legislative process. These guidelines were released last year, 2015, and they are actually available on the Kenya Law Reform Commission website on, you know, the ideal situation and the preferred situation in terms of legislation on account of the Constitution. First of all, the Law Reform Commission says that for all legislation, you start with a policy. Now, what the policy does is that it allows you, first of all, to map the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders that are going to either benefit from the law or going to be gatekeepers of the law, and so forth and so on. So you get to know the various associations and so forth and so on. You also really help build consensus within the ministry on the direction of legislation, because a policy is a philosophical direction, a vision for the ministry. Now, these proposals were being presented without, the advantage of a philosophical base, without a grounding. So really the place to start is to say, what is the philosophical underpinning of this legislation? So that if you say that we want to be able to classify films and so on what basis are you doing that? How do you enhance free expression, but at the same time regulate, ensure that children are protected, ensure all sorts of things happen? I think that you also need, the policy allows you, for example, now we find that there is almost tension between the various arms in the Ministry of Culture. With a policy, you don't do that. You cannot have that type of tension because you build consensus ahead of time. So my view, I will not say, I may not necessarily use the word trash, but I'll say start afresh, from zero.
Okay.
Because he's very uncomfortable with the word trash. But start from zero. Start from zero, develop a policy framework. Let us understand what it is that you are responding to, what the problem is, and let's solve the problem right from there, and let's follow the guidelines provided by the Law Commission.
All right, Dr. Njoki, real quick, and then give him an opportunity
I'll go really
respond.
quickly. I'd like to talk about the places where I do agree with Dr. Mutua, and there are several. I do agree that CAP 222 desperately needs reform. It's not a CAP that at this point is conducive to the growth of such an exponentially potentiated sector. You know what I mean? And Dr. is even here agreeing with me. I agree with him definitely that we don't want to be a country that allows children willy-nilly to see all manner of sensitive content. I do take issue, however, with the way in which the board has taken on the mandate of trying to make sure that all the children of this land do not see some of these things. These children have parents. These children come from social contexts. These children have communities that they belong to, whether they are communities of faith, whether they are ethnic communities, whether they are communities of places where people live, that they are answerable to. And the thing that KFCB should be doing is being responsive to all of these contexts. Okay. Not trying to separate artists and creators from parents, from children. I am somebody's child. I might be somebody's parent one day. I definitely want to live in a Kenya that is going to be safe and functional for everybody, and a Kenya that follows the Constitution, and the Constitution uplifts the rights of the individual above any other right.
Mutu always says is he's monitoring content.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's nothing wrong with monitoring content. If there are people who are going out of their way to be funny around content, who are showing strange content outside of watershed areas, then let us deal with those cases, case by case, which is what the board has always been mandated to do. This thing where you come with a nyahunyo for the entire industry, like and in ways that are not helpful. Yes. They don't engender dialogue. They're not useful. They're not useful.
Let's give Ezekiel.
And also we cannot also when we take issue with these things, then we are called drunks in public. And so my mother can see me being called a drunk by a senior public official. So what does that say about him, and what does that say about me?
Well, you did say some of those who came were inebriated, but you can clarify or if it would help.
Do you really want me to talk? Or
I want you to talk, and that's why I'm giving you the opportunity to respond to what he said. And he said he brought the issue.
Keep quiet, then?
No, you can't, because to be fair, we're giving you a right of reply. And I had them line out the issues that they feel outstanding.
Do you want to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me respond to the issues that as outlined.
Yes.
First of all, Professor Kimani Njogu is speaking about legislative process. What he has spoken about in the guidelines are when you are making a new law. It is not a new law. This is CAP 222, an existing law. It's a review, and the review doesn't go that way. So first of all, let's correct that. But I agree, in terms of procedures, we need to look at it and engage, and we are open for that. The person guiding this process is a senior lecturer at the School of Law. And he was speaking there.
The gentleman who got shot.
He was called a quack.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the kind of a discipline that I find appalling, that we can come in a public meeting and call a senior officer a quack, and we are being too edgy about that being corrected or being talked about. So I think, first of all, there's no sincerity, there's no honesty about the whole discussion.
Right.
There's a very deliberate aim to actually evade the real issues, and I'm disturbed by that.
Okay.
The real issues are, we have a problem in this sector. We have a problem about content, and that content needs to be regulated, at least to protect children from harmful exposure.
All right.
And we need to separate so that when Daktari says she is also a child of somebody, that is true. So is Ezekiel Mutua. I'm actually a child of somebody. Both of my parents are there. I also have children. And so, but in this context, I'm the CEO of KFCB. And so in this debate, I should be treated as such. Then we treat Joki as a film, as a content producer, so that we are clear who we are talking to.
Just to get
so
it
that
out
when
of
we go to parents, we talk to parents. Please allow me to clarify.
Go ahead.
And then Professor talked about, he said he doesn't want to use the word trash. He says we start afresh.
Yeah.
That's acceptable. But when we are starting afresh, CAP 222 is not suspended. It's an operational law. Okay? And then I'm disturbed about also the dishonesty in the discussion, because just the other day in July 1st, the Communications Authority of Kenya published the programming code for free-to-air radio and TV, which has tremendous impact on the industry. It spells out serious issues about the industry. Nobody said we should go for the policy first. But when KFCB talks about issues of content, people say, oh, hold it, let's go for policy. Why didn't we say we go for policy when the Communications Authority of Kenya published this document, which I carry with me? Why was that not important when we brought this document to? So we are reviewing CAP 222. You need to understand this is part of my performance targets. Performance targets are structured right from the president to the minister to the chairman of the board to the CEO.
You can't just trash it.
Oh, you can't. I'm shocked that a professor that taught me would imagine that you can trash. It is part of my performance target 2016-2017. And unless that target is renegotiated for good reasons, then this is difficult because even Treasury funded KFCB to undertake this process. And that's why when we went to the National Museum, we said, okay, it looks like the document we posted has caused a lot of animosity. Can we put it aside and agree on the procedure of reviewing CAP 222? And we were willing. We actually set aside the program and agreed to go back to the process.
Yes, I'd like to point you to what Bonajim brought out about stakeholders and
engagement.
Them being engaged, and because he feels in this.
I want Jim to be assured, and Daktari, that was the first meeting. The first meeting. In fact, what we were hoping, and we were being sincere, we were hoping that we would go clause by clause, say this is bad, we don't agree to this, remove it, and even it was going to take us a week. We are the ones funding the meetings, creating the environment and the atmosphere for the industry to discuss. Yes. We were going to go word by word. And for people to say we don't want to see it, trash it, yet there is an existing law, that is so bad. Let me tell you, the language, I don't really like the language in CAP 222, and this is the way it is. If you can Google in the Kenya law report, what you get, it says CAP 222 film and stage plays of the laws of Kenya. And it says an act of parliament to provide for the controlling of the making and exhibition of cinematograph films, for the licensing of stage plays, theaters, and the cinemas, and for purposes incidental thereto and connected therewith. And even though the industry argues that some of the elements of stage plays were deleted under the IPPG, the underpinning philosophy of CAP 222 is an act of parliament for controlling the making of exhibition, cinematographic films, the licensing of stage plays, theaters, and the cinemas.
That's what you'd want to at least review.
And we were saying, why don't we go through this, even change this language, go to number one, the title, that way. That's how you make the law, in my understanding.
Okay.
And we posted this document on our website in good faith.
All right.
If we had anything to hide, we would have gone to those religious leaders who really want a law to protect children from harmful content. Right. But we started with these main players. In fact, you have seen what the CS calls them. I want you to, this is the handwriting of my CS, writing to me, and he says, crucial. Would you please meet with these crucial stakeholders and iron out these outstanding matters?
Right.
You call the stakeholders, but they hold you hostage.
Things got hot, didn't get ironed out. Just a quick one, because I'm under pressure for time.
I'm glad that Ezekiel has told us that the ground zero, as you've shown, starting from zero, is CAP 222. So we have problems with CAP 222. I think we need to start addressing those points one by one, which is what we wanted to do at that meeting.
Yes, that was the purpose of the meeting. And I'm very happy people are nodding.
And I have my notes here.
Ask the question, do you want to review CAP 222 or do you want to repeal the act? And so that you actually have a much more robust,
Please allow me again. Review when these stakeholders wrote to the CS, they raised 11 issues. Okay, one of them was film licensing fees, which they said was exorbitant, and Daktari Njoki has alluded to that. Then they talked about, and they even gave recommendations, what they want. Then they talked about non-registered and rogue film agents. Then they talked about registration and accreditation of local production companies. They talked about Kenya government agencies for film industry development being too clustered and too many. They talked about the issues of foreign crew visas and the film special passes. They talked about Kenya advertisement on foreign soil and so on. There were 11 issues.
And this is what you
we picked the ones related to KFCB because we are an existing body. Right. We are funded by the government to do certain work, to rate content. Okay. And like I've told you, even up to July, just July this year, we were given more mandate. So it's not like you are wishing KFCB away. The Presidential Task Force on Parastatal Reforms in 2013 gave us more mandate. It said all the regulatory powers in the film industry shall be done by KFCB, such that even the licensing of filmmakers, which was hitherto done under the Department of Film Services, was transferred to KFCB. And that presidential task force is the one that moved us from the Ministry of ICT to the Ministry of Culture. It's a serious document. It made us move physically, you know. So it is not a document you can wish away. And that's why I'm saying the starting point, and I plead with you, Prof, is to check CAP 222. Whether we are going to overhaul it totally, let us start somewhere. What we proposed was a way forward, and we were expecting that we go line by line. Or people say, no, we don't want a review, we want an overhaul.
Trash it. That's what they said. At least you say that. So we'll get to the issues. Please, at least I hope you've outlined the ones that stand out for you. That's Jim, Dr. Njoki, Professor N. Mwaniki, and also Bwana Ezekiel, the clarifications that you'd like to make when we come. The Films and Stage Plays Act Cap 222. This is the issue that we're discussing. Well, it has been acrimonious as it's played out, and in some people's perspectives, misrepresentative of the facts on the ground. We're looking at the recourse and the avenue moving forward. Is it to repeal it? Is it review it, as Bwana Ezekiel says? What do we have from history that we can work with, Bwana Jim?
I think that what nobody seems to talk about is that in 2012, in Manzoni, we had 100 stakeholders, representatives of various government arms, Revenue Authority, Customs, KWS, everybody was there. Foreign Affairs even was there. And we all met in Manzoni, and we went through the final draft of the policy for the film industry. And we finished that by Saturday. And then on Sunday, we went through the bill, the Film Bill 2012, and we went through it line by line, all the stakeholders, all the different associations, government representatives, and we finalized the bill. Granted, this was a pre-devolution bill.
Yes.
But at this point in time, we could take it, slice off things that don't apply anymore, and we still have a very good functioning bill that can be salvaged, put together very quickly, and put into effect. We can repeal 222 immediately, and that can take off.
Right.
And that covers every facet of our industry.
Because the notion is that we're just against change or new regulations for some reason, that we just rebel against it. But that's not the case. If anything, he's a veteran. They've been in the industry for long. They'd want an environment that's more convenient and efficient for the industry. What do you make of that proposal, if anything?
I think the process of having a film policy is ongoing. Like I said, the document that was submitted to us, we picked the issues that are within the purview of Kenya Film Classification Board. And one of them is review of CAP 222. In fact, in our letter to the CS, we said actually it's just as good that you have brought up these issues because some of them are being addressed within the process of review of CAP 222. We were acting in good faith. And like you can see from the CS, he's very keen to listen to the industry. When he got this letter, it never lasted an hour in his office. He sent it to me and told me to meet with the industry stakeholders. But Jim will tell you, and Mwaniki has been also in the industry for long, and so are these distinguished men and lady, that the film policy has been a long process. It's not within the purview of KFCB. Neither is it within the purview of one state agency. We are lucky right now. There's a Department of Culture and a Principal Secretary who is committed to pushing this industry forward. And we are hoping that that will move, will be done sooner than later.
Yes.
The policy does not negate the existence of CAP 222. Because like I said, we are not creating a new law. But it will speak to the various dynamics and operations of the various agencies within the industry and give direction so that even classification of content is going to be guided by a certain policy.
Yes.
But we cannot say we suspend life until the policy comes to being.
Right. No suspension. You're saying it's an ongoing process.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that now that PS Okudo is so committed to this, it's going to happen. It has been a long, process.
And would such ideas be able to be...
Absolutely. What he's suggesting would help. Look, everybody is committed to the welfare of this industry. The government has a role to play. These stakeholders have a role to play. All of us mean well. What we are urging is we have a convergence of mind. you know, so that we talk to each other instead of looking like it's a fight. Because what Mwaniki alluded to is actually the truth. We can deny it here, but even before Ezekiel Mutua came to KFCB, I was within the industry because I was the information secretary of this republic. And I knew what was going on. I used actually to be the one interviewing the CEOs of these organizations. And I do know that there's been acrimony in this industry. This industry has been chaotic for far too long.
Yes.
And it's because our interests are so selfish and there is self-preservation on so many issues that we don't see the bigger picture.
Okay.
Until we see the bigger picture, even that policy will not sort out the issues that we have.
Dr. Njuki, and then
yeah, I'm very glad that Chai has brought up the issues of the bigger picture, and I think the bigger picture is incredibly important to the review of CAP 222,
yes,
and even to the whole conversation around public sensitization. And as an aside, I would like to say that I think the public sensitization projects that by anybody, not just KFCB, but anybody, are really important. And I don't think that public sensitization should be the only thing where we're just going to tell Kenyans as though they're just inert, passive recipients of our information. These things should be public sensitizations and dialogue. We need to hear where Kenyans are. We need to evolve our thoughts together. That was the process that gave us the constitution that we all love right now. So I'll just say that. The other thing I wanted to mention was I feel it's unfair of us to speak about this law as though it only talks about film. And I'd like to read from a part of this draft that says the board may use any classification guidelines under this act to declare writings, drawings, that's visual art, prints, that includes newspapers, it includes books, paintings,
which page is this?
Printed matter, pictures, posters, emblems, photographs, and cinematograph films, which is what actually falls under the purview of the Act, or other object to be objectionable. And on the basis of objectionability, the question whether or not a publication is objectionable is a matter for the expert judgment of the board or its authorized officer, and evidence as to or proof of any of the matters or particulars that the person is required to consider in determining that question is not essential to its determination.
Just point me to the page in the cap.
No. That's the draft.
Okay.
That's the draft.
Okay.
And I think it's bits and pieces of the draft like that. I don't think we should fault industry practitioners for being so acrimonious towards this draft. And I will say again that there is no amount of magic and transformation that's going to turn a gunia into an evening gown. There's some of these things you just have to have the right material to begin with. Right. And so when you're presented with what is the wrong material, we do need to move on. Now, I want to talk about a case that Nation Media Group had versus the AG in 2007, where the High Court described modern Kenya as culturally barren. Okay? The High Court, a state perpetuated by colonial and post-colonial policies. Now, some of these policies will continue to have us as a culturally barren state. Whenever we police, whenever we have punitive policies on culture creators and content creators, whenever we have even a draft that stands to punish the people that want to make a thing and to put 1,001 steps in their path towards making a good thing, a thing that has been made by people of Kenya, something that can even be watched elsewhere, but all the people who create in this country, and Mwaniki can tell you this, GB can tell you this, we want to create for the people of Kenya to enjoy. Right. We want to create for the people of Kenya to see themselves represented on our screens. We have far too much foreign content on our screens. But when these laws and drafts and whatever, even the whisper of a policy that's going to make such a nascent, fledgling industry such a difficult one to work in, such an impossible one to work in, and where we can smell the lack of constitutionality on the bill, of course we're going to have a problem. Not on the bill, on the draft, because Daktari is committed to calling it a draft, and that's what it is. Right. And let me finalize by saying this. I think we should trust Kenyans to belong to this country, to own their freedoms, and not just creatives, because one of the things that has been said by the media, and I don't agree with, is that the only people who are interested in freedom in this context is creators of cultural content. That's not true. All of us were set free in the 1960s. All of us are very interested in occupying this country to the best of our ability. So we need to be trusted to do that. We need to be trusted as parents to raise our children properly. We need to be having public sensitization and dialogue as to how we can make sure that rogue stations who are doing this pornography that everybody knows can be stopped. Them as themselves, not trying to police even the creation of a thing. That's like saying that if there are a few rotten apples, let's go and burn down all the apple trees. Right. That's not a way to mend any industry. Right. And I feel like that is where Daktari and his board are coming from, a place that is fundamentally antagonistic to the creative economy of this country.
All right, Monique.
Culturally, did you say culturally?
Creators of cultural content.
No, you said the Kenya is barren.
Culturally barren. Isn't that a strong word?
It's a very strong
very
word.
Strong.
And by the way, I think it's propagated by what we're seeing on media, because they want to show Niger.
They want to all the stations at the same time show all the same Mexicans. It's the same Paloma. It's the same girl going to work in a rich home. It's all the same.
Where is the creativity? I think what we want to see is a space where the creatives can express themselves, can be able to bring things that are beautiful. I mean, we saw some very good movies. By the way, do you know it was 5 years ago since Nairobi Half-Life? And just looks like the other day, it's 5 years ago, and nothing has been created in between that time that has been at that level. We need to actually create a place. You know what the bigger picture is? The bigger picture is what Nigeria is doing. Nigeria is doing $540 million a year. They are employing 1 million people. That is what the big picture is.
It's creative economy.
We need to create that picture. Right now we're talking about maybe 30,000 people in our industry. We're talking about 1 million people in Nigeria. That is the future. That is where we need to target ourselves. And Ezekiel, I think what you've been able to achieve is having all of us talking the same voice, doing our homework, because now we know about Cap.
By the way, I wish I could pick it from there.
I met people who have never didn't even know there was Cap 222.
Yes.
Now they know, hey, there's a Cap 222.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Mark, if I can pick it
Let's
from there,
take it.
But let us finish.
No, that's it. Take it from there.
You know, I'm glad that I've energized the industry. By throwing spanner in the works, you started by saying...
Well, is it really just throwing spanner in the works?
No. We have not arrested a journalist. Since I came, all the decisions that we have taken, we have never taken anyone to court. But we have created a national conversation that has gotten this industry talking. I'm so happy about the energy that we are seeing, the diligent interpretation of the law and the processes. And I think it's a good thing. We need to give credit where it is due. But please allow me, Dr. Ngumi has made some serious proposals that I want to react to. First of all, and I appeal to you, Daktari, these are proposals. Let us not be too edgy about them, because...
I'm not being edgy, sir.
No, allow me, for lack of a better word, they are proposals from KFCB. In our wisdom or lack thereof.
But they're proposals that can be acted upon to make law.
They can actually be changed, all of it. You can change everything.
Perhaps that's what you're saying.
Which is the equivalent of trashing it.
No. Yes, you can't trash without reading them. Because what you need to do is go through and say, do you even want to call it Films and Stage Plays Act? We proposed, based on South African model, because our counterpart in South Africa, they are called Film and Publications Board. And we went there and we studied that model, and we thought it was good for Kenya. We could have been wrong. We only introduced the debate. They are called Film and Publications Board, and they actually regulate certain publications. Publications Board, Mark, exist everywhere in the world. They are not retrogressive.
That's true.
Even in US, in the UK. No, let me finish.
Let me finish.
The police, she has talked about the role of the police, about delivering scripts, using the English, and if you have to deliver them to the CEO in another language, you meet the cost of
the cost.
That is actually in the law as it is today. Okay? The role of the police is there. No, I'm serious. It's there. I have the act.
I know it's there.
Yes. Okay? It is there. Thank you, Jimmy.
We are practitioners, and
so those things are there. The role of the police, and believe you me, why we didn't change that or throw it away ourselves at that stage is because we do know in the process of filmmaking, certain films require use of firearms. If you're going to go to the police station and get some firearms so that you can use them in in the shooting of a movie, you certainly would need a policeman to be with you. No, allow me to just I was responding. So it is not finishing everything. It's not to come and control
on an issue you
brought up. On the gun, please.
On the gun.
Yeah. Okay. The film board or DFS before the KFCB have no interaction with the police. Yes, firearms are used on films. We use them. How we use them is we get the script approved, which you will approve for us. Then I will write to the IG and I will say I need to use weapons on my set. If he gives me permission, he will tell me I will be operating under the jurisdiction of the Firearms Bureau. And he will copy that letter to the Chief Licensing Officer, who then will appoint an armorer plus some officers who will supply us with the weapons and the blanks and the ammunition and anything else that is required, and they will always have full custody of it.
But Jim, with tremendous respect, without cutting you short, in section 9(1), it says power of police or appointed person at the making.
I am aware of what it says, but I am actually referring to your statement, which says the only reason you've got police here is sometimes you have weapons on set. And I'm saying that that is not under your purview. That is under the purview of the Inspector General.
No, you know that it is in the law. How do you remove it?
The way you remove it, from the law, is to do cross-referencing. You know, the Kenya Film Bill is actually being prepared by the same ministry that's addressing CAP 222.
Yes.
So what's coming out really is that there is no cross-referencing. You know, within the ministry. The way you deal with this is you avoid conflict of laws, you focus on the film bill and look at address CAP 222 in the film bill, you know, knock off as much as you can and assign tasks for the Kenya Film Classification Board under that bill, you know, and give Department of Film Services tasks and so forth, so that you have one substantial, robust, you know, a bill that takes care of industry, and you will be catered for, everybody will be catered for, industry will be happy. And I also want to say something that I'm very, very unhappy about with regard to the proposal. And this relates to the ways in which the board wants to control the creative process. I'm a writer. Sometimes when I write, I recall my play from the printer, because suddenly I have an idea that really needs to be revised. So in your case, you are proposing that for all video games, before you, at every single stage, you present the text, you present the script. If you make any revision to the script, you go back for permission. And you keep going back all the way until the final product. We know that the creative process itself is a very spontaneous process. What you see in the text, in the script, is not what eventually comes out, because decisions are made along the way, you know, and so on. So I really think that you have to allow for sufficient flexibility, and all that needs to go out.
That we agree.
Yeah, that needs to go out. And I think that you come up with a framework that is more facilitative than regulatory. And you can do that. It's possible to do it through public.
There's a correction there. Maybe, Prof, you can help me, because you know our work is regulatory.
Yes.
KFC is the one that does those things you're talking about.
Yes.
And we are not the only classification board. I told you they exist all over the world.
I know.
So we are restricting our mandate.
And I was coming
to
I was
regulation.
coming. I was coming to that.
There.
Yeah, I was coming to that.
It can't be both.
Yeah, I was coming to that. So Kenyans agree that a certain measure of regulation is necessary for the industry, because it cannot just operate unregulated. This is all Kenyans agree. But then how do you facilitate that regulation? You facilitate it collectively. So it is coming up with a core regulatory, you know, mechanism in which the sector is very strongly represented, and government is also strongly represented. And you eventually, you know, and I think this is what's happening in the UK, this is what happens in Canada, that happens also in Australia, and quite a few other jurisdictions. So you build a core, a mechanism that is strong on stakeholders, on practitioners, and strong on government, almost in the same way as it's almost like self-regulatory, but you would still be quite present. Almost like the media council type of framework. And it would work very, very well.
I mean, Moneke has said the industry is, it's hard to see, to read from
the industry, I can tell you, I totally disagree with Moneke. The industry is very organized. The industry the industry is very organized. It depends on where you are looking.
Okay.
If you are minimalist in the ways in which you look, you just look minimally, then you will see a very disorganized industry. But if you map it, this is a sector in performing arts. This is the sector in visual arts. This is the field. This is the sector. No, he is in stage. He's in performing arts. He's in publications. He's in gaming, so software. He's online. He's everywhere.
Everywhere.
So, I tell you, all these subsectors are actually organized. You just need to map it. And, you know, we, in the creative economy working group, we have done this.
Let me say something, Maniki, of course we are organized. Blue Sky has been in existence for 25 years. We do some of the biggest Hollywood films in this country. As a company. Yes. And nearly every filmmaker in this town, you know, Tosh Gitonga, Ezekiel, you know, Caroline Bindio, Apima, they've all passed through our company as some sort of training ground. But one of the things that we have not touched on here is some of the anger at the museum the other day was that whereas Mr. Mutua insists that Cap 222 is almost identical to this, there are additions. Additions to this is his personal police force, so-called compliance officers, who have the right to walk into my studios or my set or my home if they suspect anything, without a visa, without a warrant if they don't have time to get one, to stop everything that is going on there, and then they can arrest everybody there. I may have an actor coming in to do a tea commercial here while I'm doing a film over there, and even this poor person is going to be arrested. The cameraman, the tea lady, everybody's going to go in. Then the right to keep half the money that they fine, this is why we have these huge fines, which are not in the original act. These huge fines that would then accrue at KFCB, they would keep 50%, 50% they would give to the treasury. And we all know that if an entity is allowed to fine and keep the money, what will happen is that they will fine everybody.
Okay. Is this overreacting?
And
immunity from prosecution.
How I wish that we were discussing that now, taking minutes, doing it on a TV show.
You could say this is a minute because it's going to be
no. Let me tell you, when we created the opportunity for stakeholders to give their views, that's what we were expecting.
But in response now to this, because he's brought it up.
Yes, that we come back to you because everything that is here has been reasoned out. We brought that Dr. Charles Ouma from the School of Law so that he can take us through and tell us what was the philosophy behind all these arguments.
Can I
ask
what is his experience in media?
The industry would respond and give us their
He's given a legitimate question,
Can we ask you what is his experience with media?
He's a lawyer. He's a lecturer in the School of Law.
So in fact, we could have hired
media
any
lawyers
lawyer.
even.
You know, we invited you even in the meetings that you have had in my board. We have had Dennis Deus, who's a lawyer. We have had many lawyers from the industry, and we're not opposed even to agreeing on another lawyer. What I'm saying is, when the government creates the opportunity for the industry to contribute, and you reject that process, and you assume that you are the only stakeholders, I think we're being dishonest.
But they're not.
No, we are not saying that. Ezekiel, with all due respect, we are not.
Why don't we have order?
No, we are saying, Ezekiel, we are saying
all of you raising.
No. It's because you are saying we are invited and then we don't turn up. I can tell you.
You are not there.
Now I can tell you we are very committed to. We are very committed to. We are very committed to a process that grows the industry.
Right.
So we start from that. Okay. What we would like you to agree is that the sector is organized. That the sector means well. The sector.
Those are semantics.
No, the sector.
Saying they're chaotic. You're
no.
saying they're organized.
Oh yeah, they're organized. They are not chaotic. They are very organized, and that actually there is a solution. And there is a solution to the problem you are facing.
Give us the solution. Let's not discuss the document.
Yes, I'm saying the solution is that you, within the Ministry of Culture and Arts, within the ministry, you go back to the Kenya Film Bill, and you finalize that. You read the Kenya Film Bill alongside the policy, and you will find yourselves properly. I mean, we so that you don't end up contradicting each other. You map the stakeholders, you involve all of us, and we are there. There are associations, there are think tanks, and so forth and so on.
But Moneki has something to say, and then
yes,
Dr. Njoki.
I agree with that. There are different associations, and that whole is not coordinated. That whole, all these different bodies are not coordinated. I know you have the Creative Economy Task Force that is pretty much coordinated, and you've brought us into that process.
Yes.
So we as Riverwood are now part of that process. But I can tell you for a fact, when the PS was was the first appointed, he thought he had enough. He thought he knew everything about the film industry, and by talking to a few guys, then before you know it, someone walks into his office and says, "These are the issues of the film industry." As soon as that person walked out, Mwaniki walks in with this, "These are my problems with the film industry." I walk out, somebody else walks in. So by the time he had finished 2 or 3 weeks, he was like, "I thought these guys were, So we are very fragmented. We all have our different things. Jim will go there and talk about drones. Someone else will go there and talk about the people that come in, what do you call them? Rebates. Someone else wants to go, I'm going there, I'm saying Ezekiel is charging us too much to license our movies, So everybody has a part of their interest in it. So what I think the way forward is, and I think the way forward is already happening, is what we're having now called the Creative Economy
Working Group. Yeah.
Now, that's coming through as a NIFU, and actually the PS himself, that is what he's working through. That is a very good way for us to come together, get organized. I want to see a day when we're like KEPSA, so organized. We do something, even the head of state comes and graces that event. Right. That's what I'm talking about. Then you can say we're organized.
Okay. And Dr. Njoki, as pressed for time here, and I'll give an opportunity to all of us to give us what we feel is a way forward and recommendations for the whole industry.
I'd really like to query this idea of fragmentation. I think it's very important that you hear diverse views, because not all of us are practicing in the exact same filmmaking industry.
Yes.
Jimmy is not making film in the same way I'm making film. I'm not making film in the same way that Mwaniki is making film. And all the other hundreds, thousands of filmmakers in this country. So I think it is actually the job of these agencies to listen to all these people, because one of the things that government is always telling us, and we hear this all the time as HIVA, and we hear this all the time as the Creative Economy Working Group, that we don't want to listen to you unless you are organized. We never tell politicians that they all need to speak with one voice so that we can hear what they want for this country. Politicians are allowed, you can form a political party in your house.
Yes.
And have 3 people, and you are still a diverse voice, and your voice still needs to be listened to. You can go and campaign on the basis of that party that you formed in your home. And you don't have to be a member of COD, you don't have to be a member of the Jubilee Coalition.
Yes.
So this thing where we're just all being forced into some sort of Kanu-esque union where we all have one voice. If we had waited for all the women of this country to speak with one voice about anything, we would never have had any pro-women legislature and any pro-women policy, or indeed any pro-women implementation of some of these policies, as though we can wait for everybody that is in one group to. So I don't think that's true. I think it is the responsibility of the board to harness all these different voices. One voice comes saying this, one voice comes saying this, and then the board can set a time limit on that process and say, we will be done listening to you people in the next 6 months. So in the next 6 months, whatever you're shooting, whether Jimmy is shooting a 3-month thing with Angelina Jolie in Hell's Gate, whether we are shooting in Jugu Lane on one Sunday, there will be a time we can go and be listened to by representatives of the board or representations of the consortium of people that deal with films, because it's not only the Kenya Film Classification Board. There's the Kenya Film Commission, etc.
Yes.
So there are ways in which you can engender collaborative collections of views. The other thing that I want to say is to refute this idea that you cannot regulate in a facilitative way. I think it's very possible. First of all, this idea that a regulated or banned thing should die is problematic for me. There are places where some of these things can be kept, where they can be kept for study, where they can be kept to see what exactly about this thing was so objectionable, whether our standards of objectionability change over time.
Yes.
And this idea that a film once banned is banned or restricted forever, that can never be seen ever again, also is problematic. Why can't we have a period after which we can review? Why aren't there, why isn't there a process for appeal? This draft does not have any appeal process in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So for people who want to study, for people who want to make social policy, for people who want to study the thing that made this filmmaker say this thing that the public were not going to be able to hear, what was that about? Because that is as Kenyan as the most public thing we can say. Yeah. Also the things that we want to whisper, the things that we want to keep quiet. Those are very important. Okay. If we are finding that Kenyans do, for instance, want to consume pornography, and somebody wants to make a film about that, under this bill, that film will never be made, but it's such an important thing. We need to hear who are these people who want to consume some of this media? Why do they want to consume it? And where are the failures or lack thereof in restricting media like this so that it's only open to some people and not to others. So you can regulate in a way that is facilitative to the creative process.
Yeah.
The draft is not facilitative at all.
But was the stakeholders meeting a step in the right direction?
I think, and I think we need to be honest about this. I think if we continue trying to point fingers and say so-and-so was at fault, or we point a finger at Gado and say Gado drew a bad picture, we point a finger at Dr. Njoki or at George Gashara or at Shiba Hast, at Peter Mudamba, at George Mungai, at Mishai Wangola, and say they were all drunks. We're not getting to the things that we need to get to. I think this was particularly sensitive. I think it was going to be a very inflammatory process. I think maybe we needed time in order to just kind of calm down and realize that this particular draft is so profoundly acrimonious that nobody feels they can work with it even as a draft. And again, I go back to gunias into evening gowns. It's not possible. So if we want an evening gown legislation that we can be proud of, then we need to start with the proper material, we need to start with the proper engagements, and we need to start with a board and with a film consortium within government that we can trust, that can be honest with us, and that we can know are on our side. And so in that regard, I want to finalize by just urging, as we consider all sovereignty belonging to the Kenyan citizen, as that's Article 1.
Yes.
I would like to really urge the Kenya Film Classification Board and its CEO, Daktari here, to just stay in their lane, stay in your lane, classify films. If you want to come and have public sensitizations and dialogues about the problems of bad media, you can have those, but also talk about the good media that Kenyan creatives are making. There's no conversation about that even in this draft. So let's stay in our lanes, let's talk about films. If publications want to be dealt with, publications can be dealt with. If visual arts want to be controlled, we can do that. Let's not talk about the repeal of stage plays in 2007 as though it was such a passing thing. People went to court for years to be able to repeal some of those articles. And why they did that is a thing that we also need to study, because we are growing as a democracy. Some of these things are growing pains, and we need to accept them as part of the process.
She has a lot to say, and I've given her a chance. Dr. Ezekiel, you can give your closing remarks in terms of moving forward, but I also like to give the gentlemen their quick closing remarks. Yes.
I think the polemics notwithstanding, let me just state the following. One, that the government of Kenya is concerned about inappropriate content on our screens. We are concerned about the lack of the media to uphold the 40 to 6% local content to grow the industry. And we are committed to protecting children from harmful exposure through content classification and rating. Number two, CAP 222 is not suspended. It's operational. Kenya Film Classification Board is not suspended. It's established by an act of parliament. Unlike KFC, we are established by an act of parliament. Only parliament can dissolve such a body. So to wish that there will be some discussions on Twitter or online, and then we have resolved that issue, or to wish Mutua away. Even if Mutua left, someone else will
KFCB
come
remains
and enforce CAP 222. Number three, KFCB has stood the test of time. It was enacted, the act was enacted in 1963. In 2010, Kenya got a new constitution.
Yes.
And all the bodies that were established under the laws that were repugnant or inconsistent with the constitution under Schedule 5 were given time to all of them, either reform or be matched, or some of them died a natural death. KFCB was not touched. And there's a reason why it wasn't.
Fourth point.
And lastly, when there's acrimony like this, or we go to the stakeholders, as the CEO, I'm the operational guy, there's a board led by the chairman, who is under the minister. When there's acrimony, please don't crucify the messenger. I just go back quietly to the board and tell them this is what the industry said.
I'm sure
and the board will give me a different direction, or they will uphold and tell me go on, and I will go on. So let us not assume that anything has happened.
All right.
But essentially, we will not allow the media to continue treating our children to adult content during the watershed period. That is the law.
Okay. What Jim?
I have two issues with Mr. Mutua. One is that I have been to KFCB many times when I was chairman of the Kenya International Film Festival, and they used to, classify my films. They were very good. They used to give me free classification since it was a festival. And it is the people classifying these films were all children. They're all like quick out of college, 22, 23 years old. And they are sitting there telling me what I can watch and what I cannot watch. Okay, that's the number one. Number two, I think that one person calling one person a quack does not make a riot.
The whole industry.
Yeah, you cannot condemn all of us because 2 or 3 people who, by the way, you allowed into that auditorium. Why did you not have proper controls so that only invited people could get in? Why are we being blamed for sloppy security on your side?
Don't dwell too much on it.
Yes.
Can we take a note of this?
He's on record saying that, yes.
I take responsibility.
It's very interesting for me that you don't want to dwell on your mistakes, but you want to dwell on ours.
No, I take responsibility.
But he's taking responsibility.
So, like, if you're taking responsibility for it, take responsibility for all of it.
I'm taking responsibility for what he's
including
saying.
for calling me a drunk.
I think that the other thing that we also should keep in mind is that according to the statistics that have just been circulated by the government, last year 4,000 film licenses were issued. That's 10 a day. That is not indicative of an industry in chaos.
All right. Prof, real brief and then Mwaniki.
Yeah, very briefly. I still want to say that the industry is organized. We have to start from there. Okay. We don't start by saying that it's disorganized. The industry is organized. I would propose that the CEO goes back to his board and says, look, it seems there is a problem with the initial proposals. Can we reconsider the initial proposals and bear in mind all sorts of documents that exist in the ministry? Okay? And respond with new proposals on the basis of all these documents. Mm-hmm. As the Creative Economy Working Group, we have a draft creative economy policy developed by stakeholders. We are willing to share that we have shared it with the Department of Culture. We're willing to share this with Ezekiel, And I think that it's important that they look at this issue in a holistic manner as a ministry, and cross-reference with the Constitution. Go back to Article 10 on, what are the values, the principles, and so on. Go back to Article 269 on the citizens of Kenya. Whatever you're doing, does it uphold the dignity of the people of Kenya and issues of freedom of expression and recognizing, of course, this freedom of expression have limits and so on. So this is very important. So I suggest that the way to do this is to go back. We would like to work with the Ministry of Culture. We would like to support, this process. But the only way we'll support this process is if it is coherent, from executive level. Right now, we don't see there is coherence. We would like to see a much more facilitative process other than an inhibitive process. We feel that the process right now is quite inhibitive. We would like the stakeholders mapped. We would like not lawyers who are not actively involved in the creative sector to drive the process for the Kenya Film Classification Board, but rather individuals who have engaged systematically and rigorously with the sector. And we know them, as well as the Kenya Law Reform Commission.
All right, I have to hand it to Mwaniki. Final word. Riverwood.
Riverwood. We know where the office for the Kenya Film Classification Board is, and we have been going there, and we have met with them, and everybody knows where they are. If you have felt that you've been left out, maybe you've not been talking to them. I think it's important that we actually go and talk to them.
Okay.
Engage. Everybody here is feeling that you've not engaged, because I know they've opened the door to KFTPA, and that is the Kenya Film and Television Professionals Association. I know your members have been there. From the and the Producers Guild have been there. Riverwood
Producers Guild have not been there.
They've not been there, no. But the individuals have been there. I know that for the fact. Who else has been there? Have the writers been to see him?
Yes.
People have been going to see him.
Basically, there's an open door.
So basically, it's an open door. We need to move. Task the Art Society of Kenya. We need to move forward, and I think this opportunity that we have right now, let us not squander it. We need to move forward. I've told you about the way forward. The way forward is the big picture. It's $540 million US. That is where we need to get to. That's what we need to get to. And I think with Ezekiel,
feels like it should have ended here.
Let's end it with the big money.
No, that's the big money, man. That's where we're going.
The conversation continues, and you're actually on KTN morning show tomorrow. This conversation.
How did you know that?
I stalk him. But this conversation doesn't end here. And I mean, give us credit where it's due. We've given an opportunity for this conversation to be held and also have as much an objective conversation as possible and right of reply. So,
absolutely.
yes.
Thank you for that.
All right. And thank you very much for the panelists who've taken their time to give us their thoughts and their concerns as pertains the industry. I really appreciate this. The conversation continues, if not here, online. And yes, I've promoted our competition. You know where to catch him at tomorrow morning. Thank you for watching Press Pass, and I'll leave you with Kenya Ajui, the bold statement by Nairobi Senator Mike Sonko claiming to be the one in command in the absence of the president and his deputy has been fabricated, according to the senator. He says the opposition bloggers edited that clip that was played, and what you saw was the fabricated work of the bloggers. This is what Kenya Ajui has to say about that.
A meeting at the Nakuru Jubilee offices was this week disrupted by a group of rowdy youth who were against a chairmanship campaign by a local leader. They were very categorical about their agenda by destroying chairs to ensure there is no chairman until further notice. The young men are also accused of procurement of a consignment of rotten eggs which they used to disperse the crowd. Resources said to have been funded by some local politicians in the county. On the choice of weapon, that is the decomposing young ones of chicken or rotten eggs in Raymond's language, Guesswork concludes that this is symbolic to the bad egg samples in the county's leadership. This concept of disorder is not limited to Nakuru though. During a burial in Athi River on Friday, this happened.
I am now the acting president of the Republic of Kenya.
In response to this, after calls for his prosecutions by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Senator Mike Sonko blamed it all on editing.
I think he's basing his facts on a clip that was edited by bloggers, opposition bloggers, which that's not a, we should not follow that protocol.
This means that there is much more than meets the eye in Kenyan politics. The hot potato of the week, however, remains to be the issue of the Murang'a water tunnel, whereby there is light in the tunnel, but Murang'a leaders are very careful in their disagreement with the project, claiming that they are only opposed to the tunnel construction if the plan does not include Murang'a people getting water, a scenario which can be the literal meaning of the word marginalized. Bottom line is, the only common ground for Kenyans is called politically correct.
Jubilee government knows it is a bad project.
He has confused God. Now he has come to Central Kenya, trying to confuse the people of Mount Kenya.
Representing the Guesswork fraternity on Press Pass, it is the one and only